So let's start. So welcome. My name is Jocelyn Hurtado. I am the archivist here at the Black Archives History and Research Foundation of South Florida. And this is part of our Safer Home series. And my segment is called Is It True? Tales from the Magic City. And this is where I do a deep dive in some of the little known facts, stories, or even some of the myths or just legends around Miami or just the Miami area. So today's segment is going to be, where is it true? Were there other Black communities besides Colortown and Black Coconut Grove in the early 20th century? So I'm really excited to do this segment because it's something that this topic is something that I've come back to, and this was part of some research the archival department was doing in preparation to an exhibit that we were going to have this year, but due to the current circumstances, it's been postponed. And I've noticed that over the time, more and more newspapers are being digitized. So Miami-Dade County was established in 1836, and Lemon City is one of the oldest cities in Miami-Dade counties and neighborhoods. And you have to remember there were early settlers and pioneers. In the other segments, I talked about the Peacocks, the owners of the Peacock Inn who came over from England, but these settlers who settled in Lemon Cities, I found during my research, some of them were white settlers who came from South Carolina right after the Civil War. And along with them, they brought their Black workers. Can't find anything definitive, but most likely or not, maybe they were former slaves and now they were labor workers who settled in the area. And then you also have the people who came over from the Bahamas who settled in these neighborhoods. So as you have the white families living in these areas, now you start to see these little small tiny Black communities in these areas as well. And I want you guys to remember that back in the day, Miami's terrain was not forgiving. They had a lot of pine trees, they had a lot of different types of environments. Everything was basically bushes, dirt road, and there's also talk and mention of sand dunes in the port areas, but I'm going to get into that later. So by 1895, Lemon City had around 350 residents, and I'm going to talk to you about the first Black neighborhood in the area. One of them, it was called Knightsville. It occupied around 5 acres. It was a tiny community, consisted of small lots on pine lands reaching from northeast 2nd Avenue to 68th Street. It was called the Cultural Center for the Black community. And this area is where the original Mount Tabor Baptist Church was, and it was located in Knightsville. So there's no definitive proof, but throughout my research I found that in the area there was a sawmill. It was called Knight's Sawmill, located on the bay in Lemon City, which operated from 1894 to 1904. And a lot of the Black workers lived along that area, and they lived specifically along the road called Sawmills Road, also now known as 62nd Street, now known as MLK Boulevard. So you can make that connection. Maybe it was called Knightsville because the Knight Sawmills Knight's Sawmill was right around that area, and then a lot of the workers settled there, and you can make that assumption maybe they named it just because it's close association, but yes. And unfortunately, I was not able to find more information on Knightsville, but we do know that they existed because we do have newspaper articles where a lot of the former residents talk about Knightsville. But some more, one of the more other black neighborhood was called Nazarene, and by local it was called Nazaré, and its name was inspired by the Bible, and the area we're talking about is Northeast 71st Street and 2nd Avenue. It was right between Little River and Lemon City. And let's see. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about now, I'm going to directly get it from Miami Herald article published December 15, 1980. And this is really, really interesting because it's going to bring to light a person who was one of the oldest residents in the area. And we also see a newspaper that was published a couple years later after this one. But let me bring it up. 1 second. All right. Okay. And all right. Like I said, this was published December 15, 1980 from the Miami Herald, and it says, "History lives with the Nazarene 8. Today, in a forgotten corner of Lemon City, a tiny chunk of black history is gasping for its last breath. Lemon City's last black community, Nazarene, is struggling to survive. Population today, 8. But at the turn of the century, when things were beginning to happen in Miami, things were jumping in rural community that was sliced out of a corner of Lemon City. Throughout the early 1900s, Lemon City, now swallowed up by the northern edge of Miami, offered a thriving opportunity for the rough and tumble men who carved out their empires by literally digging it out of the soil. The pioneers who made it big here, like those all over Dade, were the white men and women of America, has always held her at her breast. Henry Flagler, George Merrick, Louis W. Pierce, Julia Tuttle, William Brickell, and their names have been attached to these streets, bridges, and buildings, though less known were the black men and women who helped build the city. In particular group, mostly black Bahamians, laborers, farms, and domestic workers, and the families settled in Nazarene. Today, most of those who live in the warehouse and business supply companies that have encroached upon the once residential area don't even know the name Nazarene, and they feel they're somewhere in the hazy zone where Little River means the old Lemon City area. I lived down here from 1955 to 1977, and I never heard it called that," said Ron Gucci, a clerk at McKinney Supply Company, a building supply store in the heart of Nazarene at 300 Northeast 71st Street. "I thought it was Lemon City," added owner Mike McKinney. And it says, moving on. "To the 8 black residents who remain in the yellow and gray washed wooden houses just a stone throw away from McKinney's business, Nazarene, or as known as Nazaré, lives on. Nazarene, the name founded after much searching in an ancient plaque book of the City of Miami Building and Zoning Department, is bounded by 71st Street to the north and Northeast 3rd Avenue to the east, and Northeast 2nd Avenue to the west. The southbound boundary was never determined because there was nothing but woods." All right. Oh no. Okay. So I think the signal is going in and out. I don't know what is happening. Can anybody tell me if you guys can hear me, or is it still a good connection? Let me know, because what I can do is I can end this broadcast and start a new one, and I'll just use my phone signal instead of my Wi-Fi. So let me know if you guys are having problem hearing me or seeing me. Okay. Just gonna give it a couple more seconds. So if you guys can let me know if you guys can hear me, see me. Camila's telling me the signal keeps on going in and out. So I'm just gonna give it a couple more seconds. All right. Alrighty then. It seems like the connection is back. All right. So yeah. So I hope you guys heard me the last time, but basically I was saying that a lot of the residents that lived in Lemon City in the 1980s did not know that Lemon City was called a part of Lemon City was called Nazarene, and there was a black community once there, and they were able to verify that there was a place called Nazarene because of the old city plat books. And at the time in 1980, there was only 8 residents, original residents that lived in the area. And that area soon became filled with warehouses and other businesses. So it was quickly disappearing. And it says, this tiny area is less than a square mile in size. In the last 3 black neighborhoods of Lemon City, the other 2 known as in the early 1900s as Overtown and Knightsville have long since disappeared. Nazarene would also have disappeared if not for the 8 who refused to sell their homes. And this is a statement from Alice DeVoe, and we're going to hear from her a little bit later on after this. It says, when I came here in 1912, it was Nazarene, and it's still Nazarene, says 97-year-old Alice DeVoe. DeVoe, stooped over with age, has kept her Bohemian accent despite spending 7 decades in America. Born outside Nassau, her well-known face is topped with 2 tufts of steel-like hair. She lives in a yellow house at 372 Northeast 7th Street that sits behind the house of her son, Rufus, and grandson, William. The first house was blown away by the massive hurricane in 1926. While Alice talks from the porch, accompanied by her old black dog, a buzzsaw from a nearby cabinet factory cuts through the air. So what I want to do is I'm going to get the phone from this little stand, and I'm actually going to show you where Nazarene is on the map. So give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Okay. So this is Nazarene on the map. This is Dade County, and here it is on the map. And I want to show you Alice DeVoe. She was one of the 8 residents that was still living there. And this picture is not a great quality, but I was actually really happy to find this newspaper article because I was able to find an article that was published 2 years later when she was, actually 3 years later, 4 years later, when she was 100 years old. All right. So I was able to find this article when she was 100 years old. She was interviewed by Fred Straser, and this was published by the Miami Herald Thursday, April 12, 1984. And it talks about the interview which she gave at the age of 100 years old. And it says, she outlived a century by just under 2 months, Alice DeVoe. When she died last week, it was quiet as she lived, in a little shotgun shack sandwiched between a warehouse and the Florida East Coast Railroad tracks on Northeast 7th Street. DeVoe was not a heroine or famous in any large sense of importance. For years, she worked for a white family that also lived on 78th Street, but on the other side of Biscayne Boulevard. So this is talking about, also mentions that color line. So Biscayne Boulevard was that color line for that area. And then it also says that when she turned 100, she received a lot of letters from the presidents and other politicians in the area. And then I also want to focus on this part. It says, okay, they would say those Nassos, her 80-year-old stepson, Rufus DeVoe, a lot of color did not like us. Well, we came to make $1, that's all. DeVoe arrived in Miami in 1912 aboard the Francis E., the first motorboat to replace the schooners that sailed between Miami and the Bahamas. She had spent her life until then on a tiny farmer's cay, a rocky Bahamian island that can be circled in about an hour brisk walk. Oh my God. Can you imagine living in such a small place where you can walk the island in about an hour? I can't. It says, let's see. It On the island, relative says that the women farm and work straws, the men fish. DeVoe's man, Passy, did something different though. He set off dynamite. In 1908, Passy DeVoe left for the island and went to work in Dade County, blasting rocks to build the beach. He worked alongside convicts in stripes and chains who laid the road and crushed stones. For colored men in those days, the pay was good, Rufus said, his son, and a dynamite blaster himself. He'll make some and send some back. After 4 years of blasting, his wife and his 3 children made the voyage. And I want to also highlight this because I thought it was pretty interesting. So according to this interview that she conducted, that when she arrived here, there was no dock, just some piece of board they put for us, and there was no roads back then. Just sand spurs and bushes. My husband met me at the boat in an old buggy, pulled by horse. The buggy proceeded to a small wooden house in Nazarene between Lemon City and Little River, where 4 other families were then living. In 1971, DeVoe moved once, 3 blocks to the house she died in. So what did she do? She worked like everyone else, picking beans across 79th Street. Then she'll do laundry for $1 a day. My brother will go out and get the clothes on his and if anybody wants to leave an interesting fact, or have you guys heard anything about some of these black settlements, please let me know. I thought it was pretty interesting that we actually found a little map that showed where Nazarene was. We actually, I found an article where it talks about a pioneer settler in the area who talks about living there, and I thought it was pretty interesting, especially since at that time when she arrived, she stated that in 1912 there was about, oh no, you guys are having problems seeing me. All right, is anybody else having problems seeing me? Let's see. Okay, so I see some of you guys are having problems seeing me. Some of you guys are. I don't think you guys aren't. But I'm going to post some of the information on our Instagram page story later, so catch that on the story. And I see that I have a comment from Miss Brandon. In the late 1800s, my great-grandfather, Shadrach Ward, worked in the Citrus Grove in Lemon City. My grandmother said that they would travel from Key West to work on the Fillers Grove. Oh, it says it went out. Okay. So I see that it's going out in and out again. Please excuse that. I do not know what's going on with my signal, and I do not want to switch over Wi-Fi to my phone signal, because then I would just completely lose you guys. But hopefully this whole video will be uploaded in its full, in its entirety, without interruption. You guys can catch the little bits and pieces that you guys might be missing. But I hope the signal is working fine, and please excuse that, but hopefully you guys can catch the whole thing on the Instagram page later. But yes, and okay, and now, okay, I'm back now. Alrighty then. So I hope you guys caught that little bit about Nazarene, how small it was at that time in 1912. There was about 5 families living in the area. It was about quarter mile long, and it was not that big. It was all dirt road, and most of the people who worked there worked either in the Citrus Grove or in other businesses nearby. I saw Miss Brandon said that her family, her great-grandfather, I believe, Shadrach Ward, worked in the Fillers Citrus Grove in the area, and I thought that's pretty interesting because I know your family is Bahamian as well, so I imagine they came over like Miss Alice DeVoe's family looking for work. And I thought it was pretty interesting that she mentioned that there was some discrimination between the Bahamians and the African American community in the area, but I guess it's just that, like, you see over time where there's different migration of different people, different groups, there's a competition for work. And it's something that you do see now as well, that sometimes there's a competition for work and resources where you do see other groups face discrimination. So I thought that was pretty interesting that you hear their accounts. All right. So the last last neighborhood that I'm going to talk about is Bowstown. So Bowstown is the place that I found kind of the most information. Okay, so I see a comment from Miss Brandon. It says, yes, my mom said it was bad. And I thought, that's pretty interesting because, I've read mostly about this discrimination and it's pretty interesting because it involves the same area from the Haitian people who migrated to Lemon City, which now known as Little Haiti, and the discrimination they're faced, because they're still fighting for that same type of resource, jobs, and everything. So I think it's pretty interesting that you kind of see it in the same area happening I would say 70 years later with the Haitian migration of the 70s and the 80s and then the 90s. And then you also see it happening in right after 1959, after Fidel Castro came into power, and then in the 1960s when a lot of the Cubans came here. Because I've read a lot of articles how there was this discrimination against the Cuban, but there was also pushback between the African American communities of workers, because they were still getting paid a lower wage than the recently arrived Cuban migrants, even though they were been working the same job and had more experience and actually spoke the language. But because of the Cuban migrants who came here, they would get the jobs and things like that. And you have to factor in language, race, and the setting of Miami in that area. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah, so let me move on to Bowstown. Okay, so Bowstown was named after Elijah Bowles, a black man from Lake City. So Bowstown was located between North Miami Avenue and Northwest 2nd Avenue. He bought land near Miami Avenue, 57th Street, and built and rented out several wooden homes and ran a small store. So he was known as a local entrepreneur. And his nickname was Lottie. I don't know if maybe you heard of Lottie or Elijah Bowles, Miss Brandon. That'd be pretty interesting to know. I've been doing a lot of genealogy research into him, and I haven't found much, but we'll cover that. So, and I also found more information on him according to the Miami Herald article published February 9th, 2012. So give me 1 second. Let me pull that up. All right. Okay. So the information that I'm going to talk about, is called, so this account is given by Janice Powell, whose grandmother, Josephine Powell, lived in the area. She's originally from Astor, Florida, but moved to the area in 1895 when she was just 2 years old. And it's really interesting in this article because it mentions that the original Mount Tabor, so there was 2 churches in the area. It's St. James in Mount Tabor. So it says that Mount Tabor's church was actually founded in the home of Elijah Bowles, and I thought that was pretty interesting that he lent his space in order to start that foundation. And another interesting fact was that Miss Janice Powell said that her grandmother's father was one of the founding members of Mount Tabor's Missionary Baptist Church, which was founded in 1902. All right. So, and from now, I'm going to read to you from another article, but give me 1 second. Third anniversary, and I want to read to you this part. According to the church history, Mount Tabor was organized in 1901. So you kind of see 1901, 1902, the start of the 20th century. That's when the church started, by several families living in the section of Lemon City called Bowstown. The area was named after Elijah Bowles, a wealthy African American and the maternal uncle of Isabel Sharp Blue, who at 90 is one of the oldest members of Mount Tabor. It says, Bowles owned much of the land in the area and built more than 15 homes and rented out to resident and new immigrants of the growing Miami. The early families worked in the vegetable fields, and in the night they would go to worship at each other's home, and it would eventually giving birth to Mount Tabor, which started the home of Bowles. About 30 men and women and children made up the early congregation. They chose their motto: prayer opens doors, faith preserves our trust, hope nourishes our expectation, charity shows our goodwill, and work accomplishes our Christian determination. Since its inception, Mount Tabor has held 11 spiritual leaders, and I thought it was pretty interesting because these are one of the oldest churches in the area. As you know, in one of my previous segments, I talked about what was the actual oldest church in the area, but this is pretty interesting because, you know, these churches still exist, even though they no longer exist in the original location. They exist and move. And I've read, so this is where it gets kind of interesting. So I've read several reasons why these neighborhoods disappeared, or why St. James, AME, and Mount Tabor's church moved. So according to some of the newspaper articles I've read, there was a big storm in 1911, and there was also another storm in 1902 that completely wiped out the church, and that caused it to move. But I also heard different stories coming through the archives that the reason that it was moved is because there was racial tension among the white residents and the black residents, which is something that is not surprising, because if you remember in one of my earliest sessions when I was talking about Liberty Square, you see that, you know, racial tension does play a big factor in it is a driving factor why a lot of these neighborhoods disappear or move, or some of these physical barriers are installed. And then you also see this in, give me 1 second, I'm blanking out right now. You also see this in the railroad shop. And if you remember my segment, the railroad shop, you know, that the railroad shop annexation was founded in 1915, but then by the mid-1940s, it was basically pretty much destroyed. The families were forced to move out. They were literally given 1 or 2 hours to get their belongings and forced to move out in order to, you know, disoccupy the area so they can build a white school. So, you know, we do have Miami does have a long history of these black neighborhoods being demolished or dispersed or disappeared in order to accommodate white neighborhoods. So I thought that was pretty interesting. All right. And then, okay, so now I just want to talk to you a little bit about Elijah Bowles. So if you give me 1 second, I am gonna pull the information up. I hope you guys are learning something new. If you guys knew something, or if you know something I didn't cover, please let me know, and I'll see if I have that information so I can, you know, further elaborate and put my my knowledge in it. And if you see me blinking a lot, it's because this new stand that I have is for putting your phone and operating for social media recording. The light, it's pretty intense, it's giving me a headache, and I was not expecting that, but yes. Yeah, okay. So Elijah H. Bull was born August 5th, 1862, which is pretty funny because August 5th is my birthday. So there you go. I did not find that out until I started looking at his grave index, grave marker. So I thought that was pretty funny. He was born the same year as me. And I'm trying to see if I can find a city directory. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to see if I can find the earliest city directory. So when I do my research, I go to ancestry.com. It's a great source, it's a great tool. You can look up people by city directories and see what other records you have available, like death certificate, birth certificate, marriage certificates, And then you also have the census that provide a lot of information, as well as ship records. So those are the type of things I tend to look at. So give me 1 second as I look for the earliest. All right, so I see a couple people who are joined. Hey, Rico, Mommy. And so today we're talking about Bullsville, Knightsville, and Nazarene, which were black neighborhoods located in Lemon City, which are all now disappeared. And yes, so and right now I'm looking for Elijah Bowles in the city directory. He was a namesake for Bowlestown, and he owned a lot of lots, which he built wooden houses and rented them out to other black families and immigrants in the area. So give me 1 second. All right, pulling up the city directory. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my phone, I'm gonna flip it over, so give me a second, bear with me. All right. Okay. Yes. So now I'm going to take you to another directory, because I honestly like doing this, investigating, looking for people, and you know, you play detective. You get to see what they're doing. So here we have Elijah Bowles, but I believe this is not him. I believe this is his son, because this is Elijah W. Bowles and he's Elijah H. Bowles. All right, so this is him. So here you have Elijah H. Bowles. So as you see, so now here's in 1924, as the city starts to grow, you get more and more people moving in, and you see the size of the fonts and the directory and the names of the people just start to grow. So it really starts to, like, you know, the names become smaller and smaller because they're occupying more space on the page. So here we have Elijah Bull. Here you have I believe he's married to another woman, Victoria. And he's a grocer, and here is his business. So there you go. Now I'm gonna flip over. All right. So, this is it. This is my bit on Knightsville, Nazarene, and Bullsville. This is as far as I come to my research, but I hope to do a follow-up segment where I talk about more some of the other residents. As you know, research takes a little bit more time, so I really want to do a deep dive to some of these former residents that lived here, and I hope, you know, people start having these conversations. See if your family is originally from the Lemon City area, see if they've heard of Nazarene, Knightsville, or Bullsville, because these are important neighborhoods that once were there but now have slowly disappeared. And it's incredible because, you know, I see that Miss Alice DeVoe was fighting to keep, that history alive. That at that time, at 97 years old, her and 8 other original inhabitants refused to sell in order to keep that memory alive. And then you see her at 100 years old giving that interview and stating, this is important. So I thought that was pretty cool and interesting. And if you have any questions, I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes to see if you guys want to drop a question, leave a comment, or anything like that. So just let me know. Let me see if I can pull something up really quick. Okay. So, and also, I did not mention this, and I know some people are wondering, why didn't I cover Lemon City Cemetery? It's because it has such a rich history, deserves more than, a 30-minute segment, so we plan to do a follow-up segment on that because it's so fascinating and interesting. So it's not that I didn't know or we didn't forget it was not worthy enough. It's just because it has such a rich history, it deserves its own segment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip over really quick and just show you the picture of Josephine Powell, who was one of the original settlers in the area. So give me 1 second. Okay. All right, this is Josephine Powell, and I love looking at these different portrait photos because they're so fascinating. I love looking at the fashion, and also over the years, we've been able to identify some of the photo studios in the area because they have the same background, and in the back of the photographs, they have the name of the studio and the address. So if not mistaken, this is a photo studio that was located in Colortown, now known as Overtown, and it was located in Northwest 2nd Avenue, I want to say. And then here you have an ad for a grocery store. An interesting fact is that the first Winn-Dixie was actually was founded in Lemon City, which I did not know, which I thought was pretty interesting. So that's pretty cool and interesting that the first Winn-Dixie was in Lemon City. And yeah, and here you have in this article from the Miami Herald in 2012, talks about Lemon City Cemetery and also the evolution of Lemon City to Little Haiti, but that's a whole different other story, but we hope to cover it, so stay tuned. And I just want to say thank you for joining. See you next week. Actually, keep an eye out, there's going to be an update on that, but please tune in tomorrow for Today in Black History with Alicia Melton. Wednesday is Jeopardy Noir. Thursday is Legacy, Profile, and Greatness. And Friday is Virtual Field Trip. And Saturday is Storytime in Color. So please stay tuned in. Look out for other development programs. And see you soon. Bye. Okay.